Welcome back to Make Do. David here, and today we have an awesome project brought to us by this video's sponsor, Do3D.com. Do3D was kind enough to supply this amazing model for today's project, the newly reforged Mjolnir from Thor Love Thunder. As soon as we saw the trailer, James and I knew that we needed this in our collection. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through all the steps I took to take this from a 3D print to a fully finished prop complete with lighting that, hopefully, looks just like the one in the movie. These files are expertly crafted and amazingly detailed. The folks at Do3D did an amazing job figuring out just how to make this model appear cracked, but still in one piece. I cannot wait to see this with the internal lights. It's going to look amazing. To make sure that all this amazing detail came through in the final product, I decided to print most of the parts in resin on our Anycubic Photon Mono X using Elegoo's water washable resin. I did have to split the hammerhead in half so it would fit within the printer's build volume, but we shouldn't have any trouble gluing this back together. For the handle, I did stick to traditional FDM printing using Polytere's PLA Plus to ensure the handle is extra sturdy and the whole hammer has a secure base. The files were also designed to house this 1/4 inch threaded steel rod. This will give the whole piece a solid core and tie everything together nicely. Okay, let's get to work. Oh, and be sure to hang out to the end of this video for some special Make Do announcements. As I mentioned, I had to split the hammerhead in half to fit within the printable area of our resin printer. So, to start things off, I'm going to need to glue this back together. I'll start with a little bit of CA glue just to tack weld everything in place. I'll go back and reinforce this a little bit later on. Oh, yeah, I did lose a little piece here, but nothing a little bit of glue can't fix.
I assume this is exactly how Jane Foster is going to reassemble Mjolnir.
Spoilers? Could I just get a quick hand here? Perfect. Thank you. Now with everything in place, let's make this a little bit more secure. I'm going to be reinforcing all the joints here with some 2-part epoxy. After mixing the epoxy, I liberally cover the seams inside the hammerhead, making sure to fill in the gaps between the two halves. The epoxy does dry clear, so if you get any in the cracks, the light should still be able to shine through later on. But I should still try and not do that. I did end up going back and doing 2 coats. We don't want Mjolnir falling apart. Again. While I have the epoxy mixed, I go ahead and glue the 2 handle halves together. Okay, it's sanding time. Yes, these are resin prints, but a little sanding is still required. I'm just going to give everything a pass with some 220 grit to make sure everything is smooth for painting. To keep these edges here nice and flat, I keep my sandpaper on the workbench and pass the piece over it. Our printer was kind enough to leave these nice gaps for us, but I can easily fill these with some wood filler. Oh yeah, so we learned that Mjolnir is not a perfect square, so that means there are 2 sizes of filigree inserts. I mark the corresponding pieces with the correct slots before I fine-tune the shape to fit perfectly. This will ensure I keep everything where it belongs. With these parts sanded, I can mix up some epoxy and get these glued in place. Okay, now it's time for more sanding. I don't have a piece of sandpaper big enough to do the table trick again, so I'm going to be wrapping my sandpaper around this block of wood. This will still ensure I don't create any uneven spots and retain the nice sharp edges and overall geometry. This is a really useful technique when sanding any large flat surface. Again, as I continue sanding through this, I fill any gaps I find with wood filler. The file is designed with removable end caps that are held in place with magnets. This is very useful for when it comes to installing any sort of lighting. The design I came up with for the lighting rig only requires one side to be accessible, so I'm going to go ahead right now and seal this one end permanently. Hopefully I won't regret this later. I do. This is a voiceover, I know what happens. Okay, we're ready for our first coat of primer. Oddly enough, our local stores were sold out of our regular primer, so we're going to be trying out this new rusty metal primer. Everything gets a pretty thick coat to fill in any remaining imperfections. My God, it looks like chocolate. These empty filament spools make great painting platforms. After everything has had some time to dry, I give the pieces another round of sanding. This rusty metal primer sanded okay, but I think I'm going to stick to our sandable filler primer, even if it doesn't look like chocolate. Okay, it's time to get to colors, starting with this metallic silver from Rust-Oleum. Before that, however, I'm going to glue this top cap in place with some more epoxy. I make sure to scratch the surface to get a good bond. This cap does require a specific orientation so that the crack details line up. For the handle, I'm going to be using this hammered, seems appropriate, cocoa brown to get a leather-like texture. Probably the best metallic rattle can paint we have ever used. The bands of the handle need a little silver, so I'm going to be taping off all the sections I want to stay leather with some of this frog tape for delicate surfaces. I use a toothpick to press the tape down into the seams. Then, using a very sharp and very new blade, I trim away the tape, masking off the areas I want to keep brown. This might take a minute. The silver looks really good, but it's a little too shiny, so let's weather this up so it actually feels like something that's been through thousands of years of battle, a little bit of avenging, being shattered by your sister, and reassembled by your ex. To start the weathering process off, I'm going to give everything a coat of watered down black acrylic paint, and then follow it up with some silver gilding wax. Just like the gold bits we did for Doctor Strange's spell cube. Now this is going to look very bad at first, but just trust the process. I actually really like this cheap black acrylic paint because it's clearly just a dark brown. It's not that great for actually painting something, but it's fantastic for weathering. I cover everything with the black wash and then wipe away the excess, slowly building up a layer of weathering over the whole piece. This will settle into the cracks and recesses, making all the details pop. Then to add some depth to the finish, I dry brush the entire surface with black paint. Again, this is going to look bad at first. I use the same process over the other silver parts of the hammer, so all the parts. I use this on all the parts. Okay, now let's get this looking good again. I'm going to be using gilding wax, a trick we picked up from props and stuff, to bring back that metallic shine but still keep a nice deep and weathered look to this whole piece that matches what we see in the movie. To apply the gilding wax, I'm going to be using this cheap fan brush. This is going to give us the look of some random scratches and an overall more worn look. I take my time and slowly build up the finish, using light layers going in multiple directions. Again, the goal here is to create depth. The end result gives us a nice ancient look that has depth and feels like old battle-worn metal. With everything painted and weathered, I can get to gluing the handles together with some more epoxy. For the pommel of the hammer, there are slight flat spots on the actual handle that correspond to the higher bits of the pommel to make alignment a lot easier. So for the next step, it'd be to add this metal rod, and I did a test fit before filming and it doesn't want to come out. But there's a threaded rod in here that we cut to 18 inches and just screwed into the handle. This will eventually go through the hammerhead and connect to the top cap, tying everything together. But before I do that, I need to put the lights in. I'm going to be using these nice electric blue LEDs. They match that lightning color you see in the movie prop really well. I went ahead and wired in a switch along with a coupler using some wire nuts. The coupler will allow us to connect to our battery pack for mobile use or to plug into the wall for display purposes. To house everything inside the hammer, I modeled and printed a simple rig. It isn't anything fancy, but it'll hold our batteries and a small counterweight. I designed it to take advantage of the central rod, so it is tied into the overall structure of the hammer when everything is assembled. But before I do that, I need to adhere the LEDs to the outside of the lantern rig. You can safely cut most LED strips at these little copper plates and use the leftover for a future project. Maybe something from Kenobi. Remember to always test your electronics at every step. This thing is oddly satisfying to hold. I don't care about the rest of the project, I just want this. This light's a little bit harsh, so we need something to diffuse it. Shit. Ah, yes, a lifetime supply of polyfill. This should work perfectly. I put a little bit in the bottom before I install the lights because it's going to be difficult to get to this side because I glued it shut. Hopefully I won't regret this later. Okay, now that polyfill is in place, we can put this thing together. It's a bit of a puzzle, but basically we're going to add some epoxy to a few key spots, including the metal rod. Then I place the lighting rig with our switch and battery facing the open side of the hammerhead, and lock everything in place with the handle, making sure to align the pointy bits of the handle with the striking surface of the hammer. Then I add just a little bit of super glue to keep things extra secure. While everything dries, I can get to work on the handle strap. I check to see how wide I need to cut the strap, about ½ inch, and it looks like roughly 18 inches long. To cut the leather to the right width, I make some marks on the table and tape down our strapping. To keep my ruler from rocking, I use the extra leather to keep things level and easy to cut. A little epoxy is used to glue the strap in place. And then just a touch of CA glue to hold things while the epoxy cures. Now all I need to do is stuff the rest of the hammer with polyfill. This will really help disperse the light, giving us an even glow. Okay, this looks pretty cool, but let's turn the lights on. Oh shit. I know, I say it all the time with every project, but this one is my favorite. This came out so nice. I mean, it looks just like the reference. Thanks again to Do3D for supplying these amazing files. Be sure to go and check them out. We'll leave a link in the description. They had tons of Marvel props, we've actually done a few in the past, as well as some DC and Star Wars models. Their files are always a pleasure to work with and are very accurate to the source material. Thanks again, Do3D. Now, we have a quick message about some exciting Make Do news. We are happy to announce we are launching our own Patreon.
As we continue to grow here on YouTube, we wanted to give everyone the opportunity to help support our channel and get something a little extra.
If you're interested in supporting our channel, head on over to our Patreon page and check out some of the perks we are offering.
Every level includes access to our patron-only Discord, where we'll be sharing some projects that are a little too small for YouTube.
You'll also be able to connect with other fans as well as the two of us.
And we just launched our own shop with some of our past models for sale. Keep an eye out for new files in the future.
We want to thank all of our subscribers for helping us get this far, and we are so excited for what comes next.
Thanks for watching.
See you in the next one.
You